So, Bismillah ar-Rahim wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-mursalin. So, we are going to tackle, the lesson or the lecture about marketing plan. So, it is destined, of course, to master two. Uh, it means monetary and banking economy. So, market summary. Markets, for example, existed even before. So, in the past, and it exists in the present, and it should exist in the future, yes, if Allah wills. Of course, we should review changes in market share, leadership, players. It means who are going to, yes, play. They are like football teams, or yes, whatever. Market shifts, the change, the costs, pricing, and competition. So, product definition. Of course, you should know about this or definition. Yes, the definitions of the product. So, for example, you are supposed to describe the product or service being marketed. So, which product or service are you going to market? You should describe it. You should know about it. Of course, if you want to plan your business or marketing, right, trade, so you should take into consideration competition, because you are not the only one in the market. There are others who can compete with you, right, with the same products or better than your products. So the competitive landscape, you should have an idea about the competition, the landscape of competition. So we should provide an overview of product competitors. For example, you should know about the product of your competitors and their strengths and weaknesses. For example, whether their products are, for example, of good quality or bad quality. Are they expensive or cheap? Are they original or imitated or fake? And also you should take into consideration the position of each competitor's product against the new product. So as to take into consideration, for example, the fact that your product should survive or should excel. Of course, you should take into consideration the position, the rank, positioning of product or service. Of course, a statement that distinctly define the product in its market and against its competition over time. You should know about its position. Is it well classified, badly classified? Is it among the first one or the last one, right? So as to take, for example, measures in order to promote, yes, and to make your product or service, for example, better than your competitors. And also the consumer promise. You should know, for example, about the consumer. Are the consumers going to, for example, to buy from you? Are they ready, for example, to consume your products or to use your services, right? Or to buy your services? So you should have a statement summarizing. You should write a statement which summarizes the benefit of the product or service to the consumer, right? So this is a kind of and of course you should take into consideration communication strategies. So how can you message, for example, and be messaged by the audience? And what about target consumer demographics, for example, right? So you have to take into consideration your audience, for example. How can you message them and to be messaged through television, for example, the internet, radio, for example, publicity as in, for example, the outdoor publicity, through, for example, organizing meetings, seminars, or fairs, so as to show your display your products and tell them about your services, and also what are you targeting, adults, young people, children, men, women, or all of them. Of course, you have to take in consideration packaging and fulfillment. If you want, for example, you should, for example, of course, when you want to sell your products, you have to wrap them, yes, to use packaging. So you have to discuss the form, discuss form factor, for example, the price, the look, the strategy, right, the size, the quality, etc. And it depends on the service or the good, yes, you are going to produce and manufacture. And also you should discuss the fulfillment issues for items not shipped directly with the product. And COGs, of course, you have to it means to summarize the cost of goods and high-level bill of materials. So all these are to be. What about launch or launching strategies? So when you want to launch your plan, so you have to take into consideration if product is being announced, if the consumers, the buyers, or the public buyers, yes, know about your product. Because if they don't know about it, so how can they buy it? And also the promotion of the budget. So are you ready for the promotion of the budget? Right? And also, you don't have to forget the supply backup material with detailed budget information for review. All these are to be. What about the public relations? There should be strategy and execution. I'm sorry. So the public relation, you should take into consideration the public relation strategies. So what strategies are to be adopted? What are the public relations plan to be highlighted? You should have backup public relations plan, including editorial calendars, speaking engagements, conference schedules, organizing, for example, symposia, yes, fairs, discussions over, yes, your goods and products or service. And also you should not forget about publicity, or what we call advertising. And it is among the strategy and execution. You should, for example, have a strategy or strategies, and you have to apply them. Yes, you apply these strategies in order to make your advertising successful and reach, for example, the targets, yes, or people who are targeted, such as an overview of the strategy, the overview of media and timing. So which media are going to be taken into consideration? The internet, radio, television, newspapers, magazines, outdoor, for example, slogans, for example, billboards, through, for example, campaigns, for example, fairs, organizing, for example, symposia, conferences, yes, or for example, days, for example, for this. Also, there should be an overview of advertising spending. So please, are you ready to spend a lot of money on advertising? So because advertising may cost you a lot of money and a lot of effort and time. Are you ready for that? So, and how can you be successful, right? What about other promotion? So, which is, for example, direct marketing. Are you going to have your, for example, goods direct, directly, for example, marketed? You should have to take into consideration the overview of strategy. So vehicles, what do you have? Lorries, cars, yes, and for example, is it, for example, is the transport, you need land transports, or you need, for example, to use planes, boats, or trains, subways or tubes underground, and also whether yes, for example, and timing is very important also. So how much time, for example, do you need? Is it too much time, for example, consuming? And you choose even the time for your, for example, direct marketing. And also there should be an overview of response targets, goals, and budget. So you always have to take this into consideration when making marketing plan. And also the third-party marketing, such as, for example, co-marketing arrangements with other companies. Maybe, for example, you can have, for example, relation with other companies which can help you, right? Or which you can work with them in collaboration and participation with them in order to, for example, to have this marketing plan, for example, fulfill. And also there should be marketing programs, for example, such as other promotional programs, for example, in order to promote your programs, to better them, to ameliorate them, to make them, for example, successful. Of course, pricing is very important. Pricing is to be taken into consideration. For example, you should summarize specific pricing or pricing strategies. So, because, for example, if you don't prepare this in advance or beforehand, you may, for example, not be successful. And also you should compare, for example, your goods to similar products. Right? And also policies are to be taken into consideration, such as to summarize policy relevant to understanding key pricing issues, right? But because there should be a kind of elasticity, for example, flexibility of pricing. So, and you have to be objective, for example, for this phenomenon. What about distribution? Of course, distribution strategy is important. So how can you distribute, for example, your goods and services? So are you going to do it yourself, or with the collaboration of other companies, or with the consumers, for example, wholesalers, retailers, or have wholesalers, right? So, and also the channels of distribution. What are the channels you are going to use to distribute? So you should summarize channels of distribution. For example, are you going to use, for example, I don't know, lorries, small lorries, big lorries, trains, large vehicles, for example. Maybe you can use, for example, boats and planes. Of course, if you are not rich, you have to pay for for the shipments, for example, whether yes, air transportation or sea transportation, and even if you don't have the lorries, you have to rent them, you have to pay for the cost, for example. So all these are to be taken into consideration, and also for example, the distribution by channel, yes, for example. So you have to choose what are the channels you are going to distribute, and which are the cheapest or the fastest and the easiest, for example. And if you can, of course, afford to use expensive ones, more the most expensive. I'm sorry, the most expensive ones, the fastest and the rapidest, the most rapid. I'm sorry, to distribute your goods and services. And also, you should plan of what percent share of distribution will be contributed by each channel. You should use a pie chart, for example, which might be helpful to you. So because you don't have to do things which you will not gain or profit from. So all these are to be calculated. What about vertical markets or segments? So vertical market opportunities, for example, you should discuss specific market segment opportunities. What are the opportunities, for example, you can, for example, have when you plan, for example, for your market, for example, marketing your services and goods. So also you should address distribution strategies for those markets or segments, and also address use of third-party partner role in distribution to vertical markets. Sometimes you cannot do the job or the task alone, so you should have recourse to other the third-party partner role in distribution. I'm sorry, in the distribution or distributing to vertical markets. International. If something, yes, is to be done, yes, for example, in the international level or at the international level. So at the international level, for example, there should be international distribution. So you should address distribution, for example, or I'm sorry, you should take into consideration the address distribution strategies. So you should discuss issues specific to international distribution. And what are the issues, for example, which are to be discussed, for example, in order to distribute internationally. So do you have the means? Are you ready to pay, for example, for the shipment? So how many goods, how many services you have to start with, right? Are you ready for example, paying? What are you ready? Yes, to have some loans from the banks to help you, for example, financing, for example, this distribution or not. So you don't have to decide, for example, yes, quickly, but you should ponder, reflect, and think over and over. So what about international pricing strategy? So all this, also, yes, all these phenomena, for example, are to be taken into consideration. And also, what are the localization issues? So we should highlight requirements for local product variations. So what about success metrics? Of course, you have to take into consideration yes, the first year goes. So when you begin, you have to take it means a good step. The first step is very important. So you don't have to, for example, engage in uh, fatal results or uncalculated, for example, yes, results. So also, uh, for example, you may have goals for the first year, and also you can add another year, for example, additional year goals, for example. So in case, for example, uh, uh, you need another year, for example, uh, for fulfilling your goals, and also you have to take into consideration and to measure the success or failure. So because when you plan your for your marketing or marketing plan, so for example, you are not always sure that you will succeed. You may be successful as you may be, for example, as you may be a failure. You may fail. So you have to measure whether these two, for example, options, right? And also, if you want to succeed, or if you aim, yes, for success, or are succeeding, so you will have to have some requirements. There are requirements which, for example, should be available for success. We cannot succeed, for example, by chance. It happens that you can succeed by chance, but not always. So you have to be, of course, there should be a kind of schedule or timetable. For example, if you are to to aspire for 18 months schedule, for example, so you have to take this into consideration, right? For example, 1 year and a half, for example. So and timing is very important to, for example, uh, to reach your goals or objectives. So you should isolate timing dependencies, right? Critical to success, for example. So how much time should I, for example, have in order to fulfill my goals, to reach my aims and objectives? Thank you for listening, and may Allah